Disassembling your Hi-Capa for the first time can be quite daunting. The more you take it apart, the more you find the intricacies of the system, and it ends up becoming quite overwhelming. After looking online, I couldn't really find any reliable or good or recent videos on how to do this, so I thought I'd make my own, and if you find a use for it, that's brilliant, and if not, it could just be entertaining. So I'm going to go over how to break down the Hi-Capa. There are pretty much three main bits. There is the upper assembly, the frame, and the grip. The easiest part to take apart is the grip, followed by the upper assembly, followed by the frame. We will start with the upper assembly, then go to the grip, then go to the frame. I will put timestamps in the description, so if you want to skip to the bit you like, I'll disassemble them and then reassemble them and give you some opinions as I go. So first we'll do the upper assembly. To start, you'll need to take your magazine out, and then you'll need to push the slide back till it realigns with this hole and your slide stop. You then flip it over and you push this pin until it pops out. Then pull this out and your slide will come off. Put your slide stop somewhere safe. Now I know this might look a bit different to yours, but that's just because it's including my buff kit that I use as a short stroke setup. There'll be a link in the description if you're interested in one of those. Next up, you will need to take this assembly out. To do that, you will need to push your fingernails down onto this guide plug until it pops out here and catch it with your nail. Then pull it out and then eventually wiggle its way through. Like so. In this spring section, we have the guide plug. We have the spring, you have your guide rod, and then I have my short stroke kit. We're now left with this. To remove your outer barrel, you simply pull here, and out comes your outer barrel and your hop-up unit. This is separated by just pulling these apart, like so. This is one plastic unit, and this is your hop-up chamber. To disassemble your hop-up chamber, you'll need a screw kit. Small screw kit will do the job, and you will need to undo these two screws here. After you have done that, this will lift off, and you will be left with the insides of your hop-up unit. This will include your hop-up arm, your hop-up wheel, the other side of your hop chamber, with a little cutout that fits into this bucking. And then finally your bucking and inner barrel, and you separate these by just simply pulling them off. Now to reassemble this, you put your bucking on top of your inner barrel. You make sure that the side with the little cutout is on the rear. And there's actually a line underneath your inner barrel, a cutout, that matches a little cutout inside of your bucking. If you line these two up, they will auto-align and they will be perfect. If you give it a little twist, you'll see that it doesn't move or slip anywhere. Then I would recommend getting your right-hand side of your hop chamber and slipping in this cutout into this hole here. There we go. Just like that. Next up will be your hop-up wheel. You'll want to expose the side with this little cut here. You then get your arm and you put this little lever piece here into that cut. Next up, you put your final side on and you hopefully line this all up so it all sits nicely. And then you apply your screws. When doing these screws, try not to do one fully and then the other, because you can leave your hop chamber lopsided. Try do them evenly one at a time to get equal pressure across the chamber. Back to the upper assembly now, and you have these front sights. I have mine changed out, but if you would like to change yours out, all you'll need to do is get a hammer and a punch, align them with one side of your front sight, and gently hammer away at it. I would recommend using a nylon punch to prevent scratching your slide or your front sight. I have cow at the minute, so to remove this, I just undo these two screws. I won't show that because it's very simple, and it only applies really to me. Next, to remove this rear sight, you just unscrew this screw here, which I will use one of my tools for. Once this is done, this can flop forward, and under there is a spring which helps keep some tension whilst adjusting your rear sights. You want to keep that handy. You'll also be able to remove this front screw which you were just unscrewing. And then this will stay here because we are yet to remove the blowback unit. To remove the blowback unit, you will need a hex key and you'll need to undo this rear pin here. Now here comes the trickier bit with stock TM upper assemblies. This isn't the case if you use a metal slide with a TM gun. However, the plastic, you will actually have to flex your slide outwards and pull up on the blowback unit to get it out. I would advise doing this very gently. You don't want to cause any extensive damage to your slide. What I do is I pull apart here and then push down with my index finger on the nozzle just so it starts to poke out. Once this is out, you'll be left with your blowback unit. You can then take out your nozzle return spring. And then you'll be able to remove your nozzles simply just like that. And here you'll have your piston cup, which has a screw on top, which you can remove with. And then with your nozzle, to reveal the valve internals, you'll have to undo this small screw here, and I'll demonstrate that now. This will reveal your nozzle internals, which includes this spring on this floating valve, and then the retainer with the hole that your screw went into. I'll now show how to reassemble this. You grab your nozzle and then make sure to put it in spring end first. Make sure it sits nice and evenly in there. What you then need to do is get this retainer and make sure it lines up with the hole here so you can put your screw back in. To do this, I use my little finger because I have very small person hands. Most people have to use like a hex key or a screwdriver just to push it in there. Once that is in, you'll need to get your screw, put it on top, and screw it in until it holds it securely in place. Again, make sure not to over-tighten this. Then back to your slide. If you'd like to remove your rear sights, you simply just push on either end of this and your rear sight will pop off. Now you will reassemble everything and I can show that process. So get your slide, your blowback unit, reassemble this, grab your nozzle, your BBU, put this in at an angle, get it so the post of this nozzle lines up with this cutout here and slide it on. Then get your nozzle spring and insert it coiled end first against the post. Then with your TM slide, put in the rear feet of the BBU first and slowly angle it and snap it in. This might take a few attempts as the nozzle spring will like to come loose. You may also need to flex a slide again to get the BBU successfully in. Nice satisfying click when you get it. Then, with your rear sight, balance your spring in its small little circular cutout, like so. Flip this down, and with your screw, place it in its hole, and then press it shut, and slowly screw it in so it fits down nice and flush. Like so. Next, you'll want to put in the pin for your BBU. This goes just in the rear here and needs screwing in with a small tool. A nice way to test if your BBU is sat in perfectly is to flick your nozzle and see that it returns smoothly. There is no crunching or scraping, so we know it's good. Next, you will get your assembled hop-up unit and slide it into your outer barrel. When you do this, you're going to want to make sure that this little notch here falls in front of this cutout here on your outer barrel. It should eventually sit like so. This then goes back through the front of your slide. Next, you'll grab your recoil assembly, get your guide rod and short stroke, which is optional, place your spring on top, then your guide plug, and compress these and push them in through this hole and on top of your hop-up chamber housing. And then that is your upper slide assembly finished. To then reattach your slide assembly to your lower, simply grab it, align it together with the two rails at the rear, slide it all on, pull this back so that these two lines lined up like we had before. Grab your slide release, put that in that hole, push it in, you'll hear a nice press fit, and there we have it. It is on and attached like it should be. Next, I will show how to disassemble and reassemble the grip portion of the Hi-Capa. To do this, I would recommend taking the slide off as we just previously had done. Make sure your hammer isn't armed, that will make life easier later. What you'll then want to do is remove this pin here that goes through each side of your grip. I find the easiest way to remove this is with a hammer and punch, which I will do off screen because it's very difficult to show that on my desk. But all you want to do is punch out this pin here. Once you remove this pin, it should look something like this. Put that to one side and safe. You'll then be able to remove this rear part here. This is referred to as the hammer spring housing. It is very simple to disassemble. There is a small pin holding the retaining hammer spring in here, which you can see in here, and it's just protruding there. So what you do is you get a small screw, gently nudge this. Make sure to keep your finger on the other side to catch this pin. Very small. And then out will come your hammer spring and the plunger on top. Very simple. To reassemble, you just put this back in top, put the plunger on top of that, push this down, and put your pin on top to make sure it stays there. Just like that, all in one piece. Once you have done that, your Hi-Capa will look something like this. You'll be able to lift this up and remove this silver part here. It hooks ever so slightly into the grip. This is the leaf spring of a Hi-Capa. I will make a video on this because it's a very important part. It controls how strong your trigger is, as well as some other important sear issues that might occur. But I'll make another video on this another time. To fully remove the grip from the frame, you will then need to undo your grip screws located on each side. You can remove these with a very simple hex tool. Once these two are removed, you will then have to undo a small screw located here in your upper frame. This locks onto the trigger guard of your grip. Once that is done, your frame will now be able to totally remove from your grip. To remove your mag release, flip this over, and in here you'll see this small eye-looking piece. You'll want to get a small screwdriver, put it in here, push down, and then spin counterclockwise. Once you have done this, your mag release will simply just fall out this side. You'll then be able to remove your trigger and trigger bar from your grip. You'll be then left with your trigger bar, trigger. You are able to remove your trigger from your trigger bar by punching out this very, very small pin here. You then just simply get your new trigger, place it on top of your trigger bar, and reapply the same pin. It's very small, so be sure not to lose it. Right, now to show you the basic reassembly of the grip. You will then put your trigger and trigger bar through your Hi-Capa grip via these small cutout channels within it. Make sure this is the right way up before doing, otherwise it will not work. As you can see, this is a fit. You will then want to grab your mag release, flip this over, place it in this side, push it all the way through, grab your tool once again, push in on the eye and twist clockwise to make sure it retains its position. You can then grab your leaf spring, place it here for the meanwhile. We will come back to him later, but essentially he sits within that small cut there, and there is a small recessed part on here that it just hooks into perfectly. We'll cover this more later once we've done reassembling the frame, because they go hand in hand together. Now onto the frame. A lot of people find this the most difficult part to disassemble, so I'll try to be as clear as I can whilst going over this. To start with, I would recommend putting your hand over this rear unit where your safeties are, and then flipping your safety all the way up. It will go much further than it usually does when it's all fully assembled. Once this has been done, you'll be able to remove your right side safety. And as you remove your left side safety, keep in mind this pin here. It is spring loaded and is renowned for going across rooms whilst people disassemble without any knowledge of it. So just keep your hands over it whilst you disassemble to ensure that doesn't happen. Once it's removed, put it to one side, keep it safe. Now onto this pin that I just mentioned. Take this out. Keep that to one side. Remember that the longer positioned one comes out the right side of this hole. Once this is done, you'll be able to see the other side of this spring assembly here. Very small pin. You need to try and knock that through and get the full spring and other pin to fall out. It might be easier to use a tool whilst you do this. Once that is done, you'll be able to remove this rear beaver tail here. Keep that to one side and safe. Next, you want to remove this small screw here. You'll be able to see inside your whole hammer unit, and it will remove this whole entire side piece. Once that side piece is removed, you'll be able to see inside of your hammer unit. And here you have your hammer and your hammer strut, and then you'll also have your sear and your disconnector. This is now your frame totally disassembled on one side. If you take a look at that side piece we just removed, you'll actually be able to see on the flip side the knocker valve system. This is what knocks your gas mags and causes them to expel gas and allowing you to shoot. I will now show how to disassemble this part as well. You can first try by putting your hand over the system to make sure the spring-loaded mechanism doesn't fire out at you, and slowly wiggle out this metal rear piece here. You can then remove this spring from this post. Then here you'll be able to see a part you can unscrew and allow you to access these pieces here. Once that screw is undone, you'll be able to remove this metal piece here. Be sure to keep your finger on top of this silver piece, as it is also spring-loaded and you don't want to lose that spring. And there you have it, this side piece is disassembled, so now I will show reassembly. Take your spring here, the smallest one you have pulled out from this side unit particular. Slide it into place, just there. Grab the smaller of the two silver pieces and you'll see that it's actually recessed for this spring. Gently place that on top and align it as such. Once that is done, be sure to keep your finger on it, as this is now spring-loaded and can fly across the room. Once this is held in place, you'll want to reattach your small metal inner wall. This has a small, tiny cylinder nub that goes through this hole here to hold it into place. Once this inner wall is applied, you want to get your screw and put it here and screw it in. This will make sure that this inner wall doesn't separate from this outer wall here. You then want to get your bigger silver piece and put it upwards so that the humped side is facing up. You simply put it in like so, and then fit the kicking end of it through the hole here. Like so. Then you want to get your retention spring and slip the hooked end of this under your biggest silver piece and into that serration there. And then you also want to put this hooped end over this pin here. You then want to get the other side of your spring here and hook it onto the other side of this piece of metal so that it holds retention. You want it looking somewhat like that. We will now continue to the other side of the frame. Here, to reassemble. For the other side of your frame, grab your silver disconnector piece and put it this way up and through this hole here. Like so. Make sure to leave that hole that's under here exposed. Then place your hammer on top. This goes through this hole here and on top of there. Then grab your sear and put it through the hole that we saw before, and so that it can catch on these little teeth that are on top of your hammer here, like that. Then you'll want to grab the other side of your frame and slot it into place with this little edge going into there. You then want to get your screw that attaches the smaller frame to the larger frame so that it keeps it nice and secure and in place. Again, making sure not to over tighten it. Then, once your smaller plunger and spring are in these two holes here, slide in your larger plunger, the smaller side first, into the hole, but don't apply too much pressure, just keep it there for the moment. Then grab your beaver tail and slide it just into this hole here so that it aligns with these two here. Next, grab your right hand safety and push it into this hole to hold the beaver tail in place. Once that is in place, angle it slightly upwards like so. Grab your left hand beaver tail safety, put it into the hole also, and align it at a similar degree to this one here. Now it won't go in all the way because the plunger is still protruding just in there. Now the easiest way to resolve this is to get this very thin Allen key, slot it just into here, and push it in so it slides into the frame. And just like that, it is done. We can now go about attaching this back to our grip. Grab your grip and make sure that the leaf spring isn't in place. It looks like this. Make sure that is not part of your grip and slide it into your frame like so it seems flush. And then put into place your grip screws on each side to make sure it stays there for the majority of this period. Once that is done, you want to grab your leaf spring, lift up your beaver tail, and now this is the bit that everybody struggles with. You want to slip your leaf spring into here, make it fit within this serration here. This then wants to go underneath the hammer strut, and the middle prong wants to rest on top of the sear in here. I'm going to try my best to show you this and how to do it properly. Once that is in place, make sure that middle prong is resting on top of the sear inside of there. And the same for the right hand prong there on top of the silver piece. Once this is done, you want to align the hammer strut with the groove in the beaver tail safety. Grab your hammer spring housing, slide it into this grip through these little slots here, and slowly but surely pressuring into your hammer strut. Once that is in place, grab the pin that we knocked out before and put it through your grip again, ideally with a hammer, so that it fits flush and prevents your hammer spring housing coming out. Once that is done, the only piece that is missing is that front screw that held on the front of the grip. This is actually an optional part, but I'll be putting it back in for demonstration purposes. Make sure that works by pushing down on the hammer, pushing the silver piece down. Everything should click and fire perfectly. Then grab your slide, align with the rails as mentioned before, push all the way back, align the dot here with your slide release, put your slide release through, click it in, done. Congratulations, you have disassembled and reassembled your Hi-Capa. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments. I will be going through them daily to make sure I can answer any unanswered questions as quickly as possible. If you like this video, give us a like and a subscribe. We will also have a link below to our shop where we have some interesting new products coming out soon that will aid your Hi-Capa disassembly. And yes, you can also expect more content like this, disassemblies, reassemblies, all of that good stuff.